my project in Alabama got put on hold and then canceled. And then we were staying out there because I had an apartment there. And then we eventually got a chance to go back to Brooklyn. And this was actually a reference photo I took for the Conquistador series, but thought it was appropriate for this. And as I'm kind of going back to Brooklyn, I'm thinking a lot about Clifford Still and how he, similar to Guston and my relationship to China Marker, was a painter that I hated for many years, and then all of a sudden I liked. And then a painter I've always loved, Helen Frankenthaler. Both kind of came to mind because I was thinking about how to make paintings in my drawing language. And that brought me back to an ongoing experiment I've had of working on raw canvas. These are older pieces on raw canvas, where my relationship to the canvas is less painterly and more drawing based. So it's really absorption based, similar to paper, where usually paint sits on top of a surface, on top of a gessoed surface. This has to kind of bond and fuse, literally kind of leak into the fabric. And so that staining aspect was something that reminded me of the watercolor process and the ink process. So these were old pieces that were about kind of power brunches and power dinners. And they were this conversation of how history painting looks different now, because we no longer have generals crossing the Alps on white horses. Instead, big power decisions get made over emails and at the time, you know, BlackBerry messages and whatnot, maybe over a steak dinner or brunch. And this is a collage I made using my partner Stephanie as a reference and model, but that's our backyard and kind of our window that looks into our overgrown backyard. We moved back to Brooklyn and thankfully we're able to hold on to our apartment with a deal with our landlord, but nobody had been here for a couple months. So the place kind of had this feeling of being exactly the way we left it, but completely different and unsettled in. So we had to re-move into our place, which was pretty stressful after having left Alabama, packed up an entire apartment from there, drove for a few days to get back to New York, visiting Stephanie's family along the way, coming home and having to re-move into a place all over again. But Stephanie had expressed early on that she wanted to burn some white sage in our place to kind of clear the energy once we got resettled in. And it was something that I fully wanted to support because I felt like while I don't typically believe in the power of sage in that way, I have come to really appreciate these kind of patterns and these rituals and how they shape our behavior through shaping our decisions, our conscious choices, and how we're going to relate to something. So when I came back to New York and found this strange place where everything was the same but different, everybody had masks on when I came back and nobody had them when I left. So when I came back, seeing that, I realized in New York, to get everybody on the same page, you know something big had to have happened, but we kind of weren't there for it. So I had this very weird, strange feeling of everybody just trying to move on. So I kept thinking about that. And I made this piece. This is acrylic on raw canvas. So you can start to see how these kind of formal experiments are melting into each other. And I wanted Stephanie to have this moment, if you look in the collage and in the painting, where her chin and her braid are kind of alluding to being on fire and the sage smoke is coming from there as well. It's almost like her as a figure, she is the sage that is being burnt.